Well, welcome back. If you're joining us for the first time, this is part 2 of a 3-part series. My name is Brian Evans. I'm joined here by Douglas Hart. Doug,
glad to be here.
Again. Very good. We are with Corporate Training Services at Durham College, and we're talking about customer experience management and strategic thinking, specifically in this video. Doug, why don't you give us a quick recap of what we talked about in video 1?
We started with customer experience because it's the epicenter of your business. And if you don't get that right, it's the foundational part, then nothing else goes right. But then now, to create that customer experience, we need a business system. With the business system, we need to apply strategy to it. And that's what this lecture is going to come in.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I personally, one of the things that I found most profound from the first video was we talked about the difference between the customer that got less than what they expected, the customer that got what they expected, and the customer that got more than what they expected. Mm-hmm. The difference between the three was massive, probably significantly more than most people actually realize. And actually kind of the negative, the bad numbers that are associated with a perfectly good experience that was good enough, you know.
That was what caught my attention. I think I said in the first video, it was an epiphany, a true epiphany, which you don't get many of those in life. And I saw the data for the first time, and I memorized that it was, in this particular case, it was 3 out of 100 dissatisfied customers would recommend you.
Makes
sense.
It
still seems, well, actually, I think it's 0.
Yeah, it should be 0, but
yeah. About that in the first video. 99 out of 100 would of the satisfied got what I expect.
More than I expected.
Yeah. Euphoric, I have to say. They recommend you, but it's the customer in the middle that got what they expected, and I think it's very important though that we kind of rehash this a bit. When we go to those people and we say, "Tell us about your experience," these people will say, "Oh, it was good.
It's positive. They have a positive
It was good.
response.
Yeah, those people are always good. It was great." Mm-hmm. The point is, you got to go to them.
Right.
Okay.
They won't bring it up with you.
That's right. Whereas the customer that got this euphoric experience, it's like when you and Brian and I's office are close to each other. You come in on Monday morning, "Hey, Doug, I saw this great movie."
Right.
That's one of those euphoric moments, and you're telling other people about it. Mm-hmm. Whereas I'm sure you've seen some movies that were good that you never told me about.
You never asked. Exactly. That makes a lot of sense.
So I don't know if that helps or not.
So in this session, we're going to talk about strategy. Doug, you have this phrase. It's a very violent phrase, but you love to use it.
I do.
And that is brick in the head. And obviously it means things that are just very straightforward. This strategy, you have a brick in the head statement right off the bat.
Strategy is always future-based.
Oh, that was so brick in the head.
Therefore, since we don't know what the future is, strategy is abstract.
Right.
Okay. I think that's key. And the example I would give you is this football game where it's halftime. You're the coach in the dressing room. What do you tell the team? You've already played the game, the first half. You've got some ideas of what's happening. Now you're projecting in your mind what's going to happen in the second half. Right. What are we going to have to do to change? But it's all future tense.
Makes sense.
Okay. In product planning and manufacturing, we could be planning 2, 3, 4 years out. Again, it's future tense, and I think it's always good, Brian, to help out one particular type of leader in this part of the discussion, and that would be the leader that is good critical thinking. Okay. So they're good at what I call doing the strategic assessment, which is where have we been? Mm-hmm. What talent have we accrued in that journey, and what do we have right now? Right. Because you need to know what you've got.
That's an important part, absolutely.
Right. But then what are you going to do with it? And so the critical thinker stops there. The strategic thinker starts there. And some people are gifted at both. Mm-hmm. But we may have some people watching who are, great leaders who have been worked their way up. They are great with people, but they're not necessarily totally strategic thinkers.
Makes sense.
And I would suggest they surround themselves with strategic thinkers.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not a huge sports guy. You're a bit more into sports, but we did have a couple of analogies in the first video, one of which we talked about the difference between a fan at a sports game would know the rules of the game, whereas a coach really knows things. They know the ins and outs and essentially the strategy basically is what we're talking about. I remember when the Raptors won the championship and I was obviously on the bandwagon, I was watching, and there was I understood the rules of the game after watching a number of these, but they would often do things that didn't seem to make sense to me because I didn't understand the strategy.
Take a deliberate foul.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So some of those things where I didn't understand, I thought it was a mistake, but actually they were doing things on purpose. So explain a little bit more on that.
Knowing the rules doesn't make you a strategist, right? The rules is kind of the starting point. It's the gray in between the rules that where strategy starts to emerge.
Right.
So sports is a good example. Someone who has been told what the rules are now sits down and watches the sport on television well, that's an offside. I was told what that is. That's a strike, not a ball, right? But that doesn't mean they know the strategy. Why would you have this batting order? Why would you set the field up this way when this right-handed pitcher is going to be up against this right-handed hitter? In hockey, how do I hit the trap? How do I defend against the trap? All of those are over and above knowing the rules.
Right.
Business is the same. You got to know the rules of your industry and know how it works, but then there's a strategy on top of that. It's much more abstract.
Right, that makes sense. So I want to talk about value creation. This is the idea of kind of really what a business is doing.
Yeah.
And obviously there's kind of different contexts for that. Why don't we talk about that?
There's two ways of looking at the context. Okay. One is in terms of just value creation. We're creating value today for today's customer. What about tomorrow's customer? Is it the same customer? Will they want the same thing? How will we get there? That requires strategy. The other thing is look at it as kind of a hierarchy. I'll use the car business for a moment. So a car company manufactures a car and they send it to a dealer. Well, there's a lot of strategy in what car are we going to build? Who is it going to attract? How are we going to build it? How are we going to strategize?
What features and these kinds of things.
How are we going to strategize with a supply network and supply chain? All of those things are strategy.
But a dealership doesn't have to deal with any of those things.
No.
They have a totally different strategy.
So you strategize, this one they could write down, strategy should always be localized.
Okay.
That makes sense. So if I'm in the engineering department of a car business, the strategy is happening there. But if I'm working in a car dealership and now you ship that car to a car dealership, the strategy of selling it, because the car dealership's product isn't the car.
Right.
It's the selling of the car.
It's that experience.
Shoe company would be the same. No shoe store, at least seldom, make the shoes.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
They make the sales experience. So they should be strategizing around that.
Where they're putting the shoes on the shelf. And
so strategy is local.
Right.
Which does bring us to an interesting conundrum that your macro business model can also affect strategy and also be a strategy. So if you take a look at Apple, Apple has obviously they build their products, they design their products, but they also own a few of their own stores, don't they?
They do.
And so that strategy from the product, how you're going to interact with the product, to how you're going to be sold the product, is totally vertically integrated.
Right.
Tesla doesn't have dealerships in terms of third party. They own all their own stores. That's a disadvantage, and they got put capital for all those.
Right.
But the advantage is any policy they deploy, they got complete control over the experience. It's vertically integrated.
Right.
So there's pros and cons, but the point is that strategy should be localized, and also strategy is affected by your business model. So I think those are kind of good ways of framing it to begin with.
Right. Now, you've used the term, you said business model or business system. I'm a bit of a technology nerd, so when I hear systems, I think IT systems and these sorts of things. Obviously, you're not talking about IT.
No.
What do you mean by business system?
I always like to use the word people group.
Okay.
So we're talking about the interaction between people, the interdependent skills, to work together to create value for the customer. That part has never changed.
Okay, yeah.
And so the business system is here, and then IT actually supports it. It's not the other way around.
Right, that makes sense.
And I actually see some organizations that kind of maybe not get this. There's institutional innovation and technological innovation.
Okay.
Institutional innovation, are we an innovative culture? And then are we good at innovating with technology? And you want to be good at both.
Right, okay.
Okay, and that's an aside. That's not necessarily this discussion, but I think it's a good one to know.
So the business system, just to clarify, is kind of the, there's stuff that's coming in, and the business system happens to, the inputs, so to speak, and then it ends up outputting something that I as a customer want to buy. So at Tim Hortons,
perfect example.
there's ingredients going into the store, and then there's a coffee being handed to me. Something is happening in the store that's changing that.
The key word here is it's being transformed.
Right.
So, and some people take this, we're going to transform our industry. Now, I'm talking about the daily verb of transforming inputs through interdependent work into customer value. This is the operational side of business.
Right, okay. Coffee beans and electricity into cup of hot drink for me.
Correct.
If they threw beans at me through the window, I probably would not be
less value.
A very happy customer.
Much less value being created.
Right, okay. Now, obviously, we're a training organization, Doug, and we get companies come to us all the time looking for training. And one of the things that we often hear is a bit of a buzzword is they're wanting to change the culture of their organization. Talk to me about that, about changing cultures.
I think we make it too complicated and too mysterious by using the word culture. I think for leaders, what I would recommend you do is to think that the structure of your business begets the culture. Okay, so out of the structure comes the culture, and you can have a lot of strategic influence on the structure. So the structure is the business system, but when I say that, I would explain probably 3 layers to that. There is the process. So like you talked about the Tim Hortons place, the
beans to coffee process.
Yeah, right. That's the process. But then we've got policy being deployed down into that. So the example we used in video number 1 was Costco. That card enables the person doing the returns to not need a receipt.
Right, that's a policy.
It gives them a lot more agility. Just because of that policy. It enables a lot of behaviors. So we have process, which is the business systems, interdependent work, creating value. We can deploy policy into that to enable behaviors. But underneath that is a third element, and that's the narration. And that is, what are people talking about? What do you want them talking? What are they feeling? And what do you want them feeling? And a good example of that, I think, I did some consulting work with a call center, national call center. And as I was getting ready for it, I found this interesting data. And I'm going to share it with you. And the data actually changed their narration. And when I say them, the people that worked in the organization. Now think about your typical call center. What do they get? They get the 1% of the organization's customers that are mad. Right? But think about it. There's a delusional part of every call center. They mostly get 80-90% of the calls they get are that 1% that are saying, hey, this is
disproportionate to the realistic.
There's everything suck around here, right? And so people can feel beat up sometimes, and they start to maybe the narration is, I'm sharing in the organization's failure. I'm not getting to share in the organization's success. You can imagine how you'd feel as an employee.
It's going to impact your day-to-day for sure.
Right.
For sure.
So the question I put to them, is a call center an expense for the organization? So are you an expense, or is it a profit center? Do you actually contribute to the organization's success? Now, most we're buying into the narration. Well, we're a necessary expense. In fact, you hear a lot of call centers that are actually outsourced, because the companies thought they bought into the narration, even senior management, that call centers are an expense. If you buy into that narration, it affects the strategy deployed. It affects the way people feel about it.
That's true.
And we got to hit strategy. It's got to affect the heart, not just the mind. So here's what we told them. A study out of Purdue University showed that if you bought something and had no problem with it, you had a 78% chance of coming back and buying it again.
78% loyalty. That's
no problem.
Good number, yeah.
But if you bought something and had a problem with it,
okay,
and you called the call center and your call center experience was really good, that 78 went to 89%.
Went up. So you're telling me that people that had a problem in their experience
with the product,
right, the problem with the product, but then with a positive call center experience, actually had a higher loyalty.
Correct, because you get to prove
you
get to prove that you really are that company that stands behind what you say you're going to do, and the emotion is different, right?
Absolutely.
But the opposite was also true, Brian. But you had a bad experience with the product, and you had a bad call center experience, which would be very easy to have if your call center people
feel like they're an expense.
And that dropped down to 32%.
Not surprised. That
So
makes sense.
this is a great example
Yeah.
of you manage the narration. We are part of the success of this organization, not sharing in its failures.
Right.
And we, and I think that's a great example of this 3-layer effect. I've got the process, the business system, creating value through interdependent work. I've got policy that can affect behavior, like the Costco card. But as a leader, I still have to be listening to my people and listening to what is the murmuring, what's the narration, because I
Right.
got to apply strategy to that too.
That makes sense. That
Okay.
makes sense. In the first video, we talked about the customer experience management course. Now we're talking about the strategic thinking course. So tell us about the actual course, Doug.
This course is actually 2 days.
Okay.
The target audience is senior and middle management. I'd like them both in the room if you could.
Okay.
Okay.
So unlike the first course, there's no frontline staff in this one.
No, this is a pure senior management piece with middle management, because in a nutshell, senior management should be working on the vision, and the middle manager should be working on the execution of the vision.
That makes
should be
sense.
going together.
Now, I have heard a rumor that this course involves playing with paper airplanes.
It does. We have this exercise.
Now, is this part of our infomercial where we say, call now and we'll throw in some paper airplanes, or is this actually part of the course?
It's actually part of the course. We create a micro business system where each table group is manufacturing planes,
Okay.
and then we roll out the training from there. We've used this relatively silly example in the UK, here in North America. I think I even used it down in South America. So it's been well traveled. It's good, and people from all. By the way, engineers. If you're an engineer, the engineers love it. Although I know some marketing people are actually quite good at making the airplanes. I don't know what the connection is. Anyways, you can ask me cost. It's the same cost as before.
Okay.
It's $7,000 for the 2 days, so $3,500 a day, plus our local travel. So if you're a budget holder, I would say budget $9,500. That'll get us anywhere in Canada for a couple of days, from St. John's to Victoria, anywhere in between.
Makes sense.
Okay.
Makes sense. So again, thanks so much, Doug. Once again, at the end of part 2 here, we're going to show you the key points of the video as well as contact information for us. Before we go, we're going to have obviously a part 3 video. Tell us a little bit, give us a taste of part 3.
Well, the world's changing.
That's true.
So we're going to look at the 3 pillars of strategic success that every organization must be managing and leading. And I look forward to it. It's a fairly short conversation, but it's some of the newest work we have, and I think it's actually quite profound.
Awesome. All right. Hopefully we'll see you there. Thanks for watching.